Hello everyone. Today we are going to be talking about the differences between who and whom. Now these are two pronouns, okay? They can function as either an interrogative pronoun or a relative pronoun. But the difference comes down to whether we are talking about a subject or an object. That is the difference that will determine whether we use who or whom. Okay? So as I said, these are two pronouns. Okay? And they are examples of interrogative as well as relative pronouns. So let's start with who. Who refers to the subject of the sentence. Okay. So if we're talking about the subject, we use who. Who can replace he, she, or they. So as you see, these are subject pronouns, right? So that means that who can be used in place of these subject pronouns or subjects in general, because pronouns replace nouns, and because who is being used as a subject, we can use who to replace any noun that is acting as a subject. Okay? So I use he, she, or they to help you. If he, she, or they can work, then you know that you're supposed to use who. So these subject pronouns can give you some assistance, right? So for example, who did it? So who in this case would be an interrogative pronoun because it's asking a question, right? Who did it? We can answer that question by saying he did it, she did it, they did it, right? So who is the subject? It's a question, but who is the subject, right? So in this case, who is functioning as a subject? So we can put he, she, or they in place of who, and it would make sense, right? So the question is there to ascertain the individual who is guilty, right? So we use who. So that's one example. That would be an interrogative pronoun. Now let's see it being used as a relative pronoun. So Charles is the one who wants to go to the beach. So if you don't know what a relative pronoun is, a relative pronoun would be a word, let's say word, that is used to introduce a relative clause. Or in other words, it is used to provide additional information about something or someone that was previously mentioned. Okay? So when I say Charles is the one who wants to go to the beach, who is used to provide additional information. And who, of course, is referring to Charles, which is the subject of the sentence. So we need who, right? We could also use that, right? But because we are talking about who versus whom, yes, we of course used who, but we could also use that because that will be a relative pronoun, which provides more information. So Charles is the one who wants to go to the beach. If we can change that and we could say he wants to go to the beach, we wouldn't really need the first part because like I said, this is adding additional information, right? So we already know Charles is the subject. We already know that. So he wants to go to the beach, right? Yeah. So we need who there. So anytime we are talking about the subject of the sentence, we use who. Whether it's an interrogative, whether you're using it as an interrogative pronoun or a relative pronoun, we use who. Anytime we're talking about the subject of the sentence. All right? Conversely, we use whom when we are talking about the object of a verb or preposition. Basically, the object of the sentence. So whom can replace him, her, or them, which obviously would be the object pronouns, which would be the object pronouns to these subject pronouns, right? So we said the object of a verb or preposition. So we have an example of a preposition. To whom am I speaking? Right? So we have the preposition to. So once we have that preposition, we need an object. So the object is going to be whom. Of course, we're talking about persons, but whom, right? Whom am I speaking? Or we could actually say whom am I speaking to? We could actually say that. We could say to whom am I speaking or whom am I speaking to? Okay? And I would say, and I could answer that question by saying, you are, well, let's say it's a phone conversation, someone asks me this question, I would say, you are speaking to, I could say him, her, any object. Any object would work there, right? If you use a person, that person will function as an object, right? Right. So to whom am I speaking or whom am I speaking to? So this is an example of the object of a preposition. Now let's look at an example of the object of a verb. The woman whom I met yesterday was a nurse. Okay? So we are talking about the woman. But is the woman the subject? The woman whom I met yesterday was a nurse. No, the woman is the object because the woman is the one who receives the action. Okay? The action of meet. In this case, it's past tense. So I met, you're saying I met her. So the woman is not the subject. The woman is the object of the verb meet. So we can't say the woman who I met yesterday was a nurse. We have to say the woman whom I met yesterday was a nurse. We have to use whom because the woman is the object. Okay? So this will make the difference when it comes to who and whom. Whether we are talking about a subject or an object. Right? So once again, this is an interrogative pronoun and this would be a relative pronoun because it's providing additional information about the object, which is the woman, because the woman received the action, which should be me, right? So, yes, but it is worth noting that many times we will use these incorrectly, but we will still be understood, right? Because I myself have made mistakes with regard to using these two pronouns. Well, mainly whom. Sometimes I may say who when I should say whom, but it would not affect the meaning as far as at least comprehension, although it's grammatically incorrect. If you use who when you should use whom, they will understand what you mean. You'll be understood, but grammatically, it will be incorrect because whom must refer to an object and who must refer to the subject. Okay? But as an English teacher, I must make sure that I use grammar as, or I must ensure that I adhere to the rules of grammar, right? Although I don't from time to time, but yeah, who cares? But yeah, you get my point. So yes, who talks about the subject, whom talks about the object. And that is the only difference between the two. Of course, the headache is to determine whether we are talking about a subject or an object. All right? So I hope that this explanation was clear. And now we are going to proceed to a quiz. Okay, so we have a quiz now, and we're going to test ourselves to see if we understand. So choose the correct option. 1. Who or whom will win the match? Are we talking about a subject or an object? Who or whom will win the match? We're talking about a subject. Therefore, we need who. I could answer that by saying Chelsea will win the match. They will win the match. Okay? He will win the match. She will win the match. Okay? So in this case, we're talking about a subject. 2. To whom is the letter addressed? What are we talking about here? We're talking about an object. So whom. Once you see a preposition, you know that we're talking about an object. But I'm going to get back to that shortly about if you see a preposition. I'm going to give you an example of a scenario in which you can use a preposition, but you can still use a subject. But once we finish this, right? Right. So to whom is the letter addressed? So we're talking about an object. So this person is going to be the recipient. The letter is addressed to him, to her, to them. Okay? 3. Mark was the one who or whom spoke to the principal. We are talking about a subject, right? Yes, we're talking about a subject because we're talking about Mark. Mark performed the action, and this is just being used to provide additional information. Therefore, it is a relative pronoun, so we say who. Mark was the one who spoke to the principal. 4. Who or whom are we talking about? Subject or object? Object, because the person is the one that is being discussed. So they are the object of about. Therefore, we need whom are we talking about? Right. Whom are we talking about? Right? We are talking about him, we are talking about her, we are talking about them. 5. The woman with who or whom I work is very beautiful. The woman with who or whom I work is very beautiful. In this case, the woman would be, in this case, is the woman the subject or the object? She's the object because she is the object of with, which is the preposition, so whom. The woman with whom I work is very beautiful. All right. So I hope that you answered everything correctly. Now let me go back to a previous point when I said that once you see a preposition, you must use whom. But pay attention here. It depends on who asks the question. So in a case like that, it depends on who asks the question. We have a preposition on, but the person we are talking about is actually the subject, right? So we can say it depends on who asks the question, right? It depends on who asks the question. So in that case, we're talking about a subject, right? But if I say it depends on whom we ask, then it is acting as the object. Therefore, we need whom. So that's just an example, right? I may have told you that once you see a preposition, you use whom, but please ensure that you are checking to see whether that person is the object or the subject. So it depends on who we ask. It depends on who asks the question. That's a subject. It depends on whom we ask. That's an object. Okay? So I just wanted to point that out. All right. So we have finished this lesson. I hope that this video was useful. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.